Angela Merkel was born Angela Dorothea Kasner in Hamburg in 1954, the daughter of a Lutheran pastor who moved the family to East Germany when she was still an infant. A product of East German discipline and pragmatic survival, she grew up behind the wall, excelling in science and completing a doctorate in quantum chemistry. Her early life was marked by caution and calculation, a young woman learning how to navigate a system where saying too much could cost you everything. That instinct for quiet maneuvering would define her political career. She entered politics after the fall of the Berlin Wall, joining the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, and rising quickly in a party dominated by men. When Helmut Kohl, the Chancellor of Unity, brought her into his cabinet, she was dismissed by many as a loyal foot soldier, a Kohl's Mädchen, as the press called her, his girl. But Merkel had an instinct sharper than her rivals realized. She waited, she calculated, and when the CDU was hit by a financing scandal that threatened to sink the old guard, she struck. In a cold, precise editorial, she publicly called for Kohl's resignation, distancing herself from her mentor and claiming the mantle of reform. It was a ruthless move, and it worked. Merkel became party leader, and by 2005, she was Chancellor of Germany. She would remain in power for 16 years through 4 consecutive terms. Europe saw her as the anchor in the storm, the steady hand during financial crises, the level voice during chaos. To the world, she projected strength, calm, and reason. Germans called her Mutti, the mother of the nation. But behind the mask of stoic pragmatism was something else. Not Spartan resolve, but Spartan theater. Her myth was built on the illusion of strength and sacrifice, but the record tells another story. When the Eurozone crisis hit in 2009, it was Greece that became the scapegoat. Merkel and her finance minister Wolfgang Schäuble unleashed austerity as dogma, forcing Greece to accept crushing terms in exchange for bailout funds that largely flowed back to German and French banks, the real beneficiaries of the rescue. But Merkel did more than impose economic punishment. The German press, long docile, roared into life with a campaign that stank of old prejudices dressed in new clothes. Lazy Greeks, corrupt Southerners, tax cheats living off the sweat of the disciplined North. The narrative was relentless and convenient. It turned financial complexity into moral theater, casting Germany as the virtuous creditor and Greece as the feckless sinner. The result? A shattered Greek economy, wages reduced to survival levels, and a generation of young Greeks forced into exile. It was not just economics, it was humiliation. Merkel could have chosen another path, a European solution that acknowledged mutual responsibility. Instead, she weaponized stereotypes and national arrogance to preserve German dominance within the EU. Spartan? No. It was cowardice dressed as rectitude. Then came 2015 and the great refugee gamble. Merkel stunned Europe by declaring that Germany would welcome 1 million refugees fleeing war in Syria and Iraq. To her admirers, it was an act of moral courage. "Wir schaffen das," she said. "We can manage this." The global media crowned her the new conscience of the West. Time magazine named her Person of the Year. But beneath the humanitarian gloss lay political calculus. Germany needed labor. The country's birth rate was stagnant. Merkel saw an opportunity to burnish her image as a moral leader while serving economic necessity. She presented herself as Europe's benevolent matriarch, the antithesis of Fortress Europe. But the cost was enormous. The policy split the EU, inflamed tensions across the continent, and lit a fire under Germany's far right. The Alternative for Deutschland, once a marginal force, surged into parliament, feeding on fears Merkel dismissed as xenophobia, but which her decisions had amplified. Communities were divided. Violence rose. And when the tide turned, Merkel tightened asylum rules and brokered deals with Turkey to stop the flow, quietly retreating from the lofty principles she had proclaimed. This was not iron resolve. It was improvisation masquerading as leadership. Throughout her reign, Merkel cultivated an image of restraint and moderation. But behind the curtain, Germany became a master of image warfare. The PR machine worked overtime, projecting Germany as the voice of reason, the defender of democratic values, the model of stability. And Merkel used that image ruthlessly. When Vladimir Putin annexed Crimea in 2014, Merkel emerged as Europe's chief negotiator, crafting the Minsk agreements that were hailed as a step toward peace. Years later, she admitted the truth. Minsk was never meant to be a real solution. It was a tactic, a stalling game to buy time for Ukraine to arm itself. A deception sold as diplomacy. And while she condemned Putin's power grab, she herself clung to office for 16 years, 4 full terms, longer than most leaders in modern democracies. She demanded his removal while entrenching herself, unchallenged, in the chancellery. The hypocrisy was staggering. Her admirers will speak of stability, of calm in the storm. But stability at what cost? Greece gutted and humiliated, European unity fractured, populism emboldened, refugee policy turned into a weapon for both virtue signaling and nationalist backlash. A hollow peace process in Ukraine that masked the drumbeat of war. And a Germany more powerful in narrative than in reality, a power built not on sacrifice but on spin. Angela Merkel was no Spartan. She did not embody the discipline, austerity, and integrity of the ideal. She embodied calculation. She preached prudence, but practiced opportunism. She built her legend on perception, while avoiding the brutal accountability that true leadership demands. The world called her moody. History will call her something else. A false prophet. A paper Spartan. Order the Spartan Mindset today and embark on your journey toward becoming the leader your world needs. Let your struggles forge you into a warrior of character and resolve. The Spartan Mindset provides a comprehensive and actionable guide to personal development and resilience. Available now for just $19.99. Purchase your copy from the links in the description box below and on this channel's homepage, because your future begins with the right mindset, the Spartan Mindset.